after we do that, we're going to have a little discussion. This section of the Sermon on the Mount, try to put yourself in the audience if you can, because this is a very unique in the audience when it was delivered, because of all the things that captured the attention of scribes and Pharisees in the early stages of Jesus. Number one was his claim of divinity, when he said in regard to he was the fulfillment of the prophecy in Isaiah. that got everybody's attention. But outside of that, his teachings, because of some of the language that he uses. Verse 21 through verse 26, Matthew chapter 5. We're talking about murder begins in the heart. The thing that we're discussing is this: how we think about other people. We've been through, you remember the blessed state of the unique characteristics of the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those that hunger and thirst. Those that seek to do right. Even when you seek to do that and then you suffer for Christ's sake, you are of influence, a person of influence. Now, and you thought, well, that's good, but this is next level. And I actually put this one as what I think maybe the most difficult text that Jesus lays out there for us. Because we need to be honest. Remember, what was the closing aspect of our righteousness today versus what existed when Jesus was preaching on this day? Thank you. Maybe that'll help. Okay. We'll see if that works. That was probably having those two close side by side. Sorry about that, but some people participate. Ed, tell her to say yes or no. Okay. All right. Let's get back to where we were. Matthew 5. And verse 21. You've heard it said, you have heard that it was said to those of old. All right? He's immediate. Everybody capture what is happening and follow the language, because this is truly the most perfect sermon ever designed, delivered, and that's why I'm reading it to start with, is because it's very difficult to improve on what is being read. I mean, as far as the commentary, doesn't really need one, and listen to the words of what he uses, if I can get them out with enough light here. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder. And whoever murders, he will be in danger of judgment. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of judgment. Whoever says to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. And whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hell fire. Therefore, if you bring your altar or your gift to the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First, be reconciled to your brother, and then come offer your gift. Agree with your adversary quickly while you are in the way with him, lest your adversary deliver you to the judge, and your judge hand you over to the officer, and you be thrown into prison. Surely I say to you that you will by no means go out of there until you have paid the last penny. That's 1 through 26. Okay? So initially, our reading has been murder begins in the heart. That's the worst thing you can do to someone. And then we ended up with a process through which we're going to try to worship. What will be omitted? What was the condition of the Pharisees, and what is being taught by Jesus in this point? What had been taught by the Pharisees? Thou shalt not kill. One of the commandments, correct? What was Jesus about to open the door to? The source of where the violation comes from. Because he's going to call us to live righteously. Unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. The Pharisees thought, as long as I don't put a knife through my neighbor's that I'm mad at chest, then I'm good. And Jesus says, no, if you got bitterness in your heart, you're not good. And so you see the shift of how we think. And so this text about how we think about others, and this particular chapter, this particular verse, everything about be reconciled to your brother. Agree with your adversary quickly. What are these? Are they the same thing? Are they two different things? Are they similar? Give me some feedback on those verses. Be reconciled to your brother, agree with your adversary. Because there's two aspects that he's talking about. What do you think?
Paul tells us in the book of Romans to all possible good peace and care.
Right.
And I think that's what we're talking about here. Get out quickly.
There's an abundance. I remember doing my little Proverbs Live, and there was a whole section that I did on not going to court with anybody because you don't know what the end result would be. Jesus is getting to some of those precepts that are principled not in justice like we think so. Somebody wronged us, they got to make it right, and they got to pay. It's just different on how we think. Now, when we get to the next one about turning the other cheek and all those other things, is Jesus teaching us to be pacifists? First of all, we have the necessity of being reconciled. Now let's read verses 38 through 48, because every one of us struggle with the reading of Jesus' text there in 21 through 26. Am I right or am I wrong about that? Every one of us have someone that we wish we were reconciled with. I got a whole list. I got a huge list. But you have to have access. So it's certainly a permanent condition of heart that actually brings you to mourning, to sadness. We'll talk about that Sunday night, Lord willing, about Jeremiah. How God brought him from incredible sadness to optimism just by promising something. But this is how we learn to think about other people, because that element within us that is always yearning for unity and always pleading for people to be right and be nice and be united, we never change that. And if somebody has got something against us because of something that we've done, then we change that. And it becomes such a spiritual issue that we can't offer our worship, our gift before God, until we get this reconciled. Let's read verse 38, picking up. Because it gets even deeper than that. Not only are we seeking reconciliation, but, verse 38 beginning, you've heard it said, you should an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you not to resist an evil person, and whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. And if anyone wants to sue you, then take away your tunic, then give him your cloak also. And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, then go with him 2. Give to him who asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, do not turn away. You've heard it said that you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemies. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those that curse you, and pray for those that spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be the sons of your Father in heaven, who makes the sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and he sends rain on the just and the unjust. For if you love those that love you, then what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet the brethren only, what do you more than the others? Do not even the tax collectors do so? Therefore, you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect. Okay. That's it. When I read this, and I've been in my preparation for the day, I just have to try to think, how do you do this? Are we serious? Really? How do you interpret these things? And I guess we'll just kind of just take them apart a little bit at a time, and I'm sure that by our study together, I wish we just had a big table and everybody's sitting that way. It's a little easier that way, but still. Think of this, and that's why I titled it that. Because the ultimate would be someones that were at enmity with each other, and suddenly that is over. There's no more war, no more battle, no more fight. When we think about that in grand schemes with nations, but then we ought to think about that in just little micro manageable phases in our lives. And both of these activities, I just want you to make certain that you don't miss this part. The being reconciled to your brother and agreeing with your adversary doesn't say you're wrong or you're right. Does it? So how are you taking this? You gonna take it sitting down? How you them's fighting words. Be reconciled to your brother. So you're about to offer a gift, and you remember he has something against you. That's how he puts it. He didn't even put it like, oh yeah, you're sitting there with that bitter heart after what somebody did to you. You need to get rid of that. Now he does that later, but you see how far-reaching this is. Jesus in this sermon, I like the way that the Chosen depicted it, because there was a big uproar after the Sermon on the Mount because of what was taught. And everybody was talking about what, and word of mouth over and over again, and you can imagine. Because this is significant. He is the rabbi, he's the teacher, and he is turning everything upside down. But most importantly at this point is he's turning upside down the heart of every human there, not just the scribes and Pharisees. He uses it because it's the train of thought, the way that people thought in that day. Just like he did. If somebody had a disability or some kind of injury or something bad to happen to them, what did they think? What was it? What was a way of thought in that lifetime, in that time span? Yeah. So they were being punished by God because of that. And so and that translated to all kinds of radical racism and all kinds of radical prejudice, right? Especially among people that were less than able. So it's a transition, but the agreeing with the adversary, or reconciled to a brother, both of them are telling you, me, is not talking about them. Because what do we generally want to do when this comes up? Well, let's just read it. When you read that about be reconciled to your brother for your worship, what do you got to tell me? What you got to say? Hold on a minute. Yeah, that ain't my fault. It's not my fault. And self-justify. I just pray every time that I read it that I'm, number one, I'm where I ought to be, and that if any person has me on that list, that they would be kind enough to let me know so I can get off of it. And that's the thing, is that if your influence, if your personality is oozing with that desire that you want that, then any person that knows, then that's how we become, I believe, better people. Well, let's go through these. I've got the book there, but the first there, be reconciled to your brother, agree with your adversary. I think our disposition toward others is simply that we are sensitive to what other people think. What's a popular thing for us to do? And I'm probably way too much. That's what, or at least someone advised me that you're too sensitive. Right? Makes you very vulnerable. But what is this telling us? And does it matter if I'm in the right? Is Jesus saying something specifically about me being right or me being wrong in this progress of reconciliation? See, we're hanging on to that last little bit of self-justification. Because when he calls us to be merciful, even as your Father in heaven is merciful, I mean, you were saying you be perfect even as your Father in heaven is perfect. That's getting there. You are going to arrive at this blessed, abundant life. Because as long as we hold back, then we'll never experience that. Can you imagine the revival and the restoration that would take place if everybody applied that verse between now and Saturday night at 12 o'clock? What would happen in the phone lines if everybody that had those kind of issues began to try to communicate through them in love? And we become cynical. I mean, it's a valid point. Don't work, does it? It just doesn't work. Why? Why doesn't it work? Right, right. Not going to work on my part because, number one, that wisdom that comes from God, James 3, willing to yield. I'm not going at it from that angle. I'm here to yield you to me, whatever I think is right. The 10th commandment, thou shalt not kill. The Jews understood that one, but they didn't understand what was required of the heart not to commit the act. How to prevent. And that's what Jesus is doing, is insulating us from worldliness, why your righteousness got to exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees. One thing to quit. It's one thing not to engage in a behavior. But Jesus is not just leaving you empty and void of a life that is just not doing a list of things. He says, I am come that you might have life and that more abundantly. And I'm here to say this. The only way that abundant life is really realized is when you have an abundant number of people that love you and you love them. That's what makes life abundant. And you got any other idea about, wealth or a possession or any of those things going to make you happy, it's not going to work. You're not going to be blessed. You can thank God for financial prosperity, but that's not going to bless you spiritually. And all these things that we list and we put out there, until this is captured, we are robbing ourselves. And sadly, even in our very city, we're robbing ourselves. I don't know why. Somebody asked me why. I don't know why. Wrong attitude toward others will destroy your soul. That's what makes it a difference. I don't want to die. I don't want to face the day of judgment in that line. Because what does Jesus say? What's the progressive nature? I think I wrote it down in here somewhere. It kind of went from the process at the very bottom of page 9 there. The process described by the Lord that leads one to being in danger of hellfire goes from thought to words to speech and then to contempt. Anybody know what contempt is? I don't know why I used that word at that time. I was trying to sound educated. Contempt.
That would be if you find someone to be sickening.
In this state of mind, it would prevent you from ever having the kind of love required to be accepted by God. Because what is required for us to receive mercy? Got to be merciful. It's in the Beatitudes. So, we can have all the words we want, but if we can't get past this, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, then you can't make it. And its own rule. The law, death. Murder, danger of judgment. He who hates his brother is a murderer. 1 John 3:15. What's the difference between love and hate? Is that what he's talking about here? It's just that he who hates his brother, what is that condition? What is that state of mind? And right, so that contempt, that hate, that whatever that is for my brother, however we want to define it, will never allow me to obey Matthew 5:21-26. And if I do not obey Matthew 5:21-26, then if I say I love God but don't love my brother, I'm a liar. And that's why I still cry. I still want reconciliation. Never change. I plan to be buried that way. And I hope you do too. Because we can never allow anything like that to control or take us. And there's things in life that can get inside us that Jesus is truly, it's one of the Beatitudes and the flow that it has. It starts out poor in spirit. You got to just break down. It's okay. It is okay to break down. It's okay to mourn. That is the first two characteristics of a heart that lives an abundant life. I know. That's not how you start a sermon where you're going to get a few 100,000 people into a stadium to hear them tell you that you need to be poor in spirit. And blessed are those that mourn. Because the things that I'm about to tell you are going to be things that are hard to line up, and the world won't line up, and you'll suffer because of your conviction of the words that I say are true. That's exactly, Jesus is setting us up. 1 Peter 1:22, the very expression says that we are born again through sincere love of the brethren. And if we get that out of line, we've missed. We've missed. And so often our relationships are so externally judged that we don't have the type of tightness that we ought to, and people disappear. Man, we just have to do better. I have to do better. And the key to happy living, well, this is it. Now, just get to the real. What could be better in life than to make peace with your enemies? Because what is the condition of your life if you have made peace with your enemies? You're blessed. You're in a state of peace. I don't know about y'all, but I think we all have that statement. In fact, I think that's how most of the ladies for like being in the beauty queen pageants, isn't that what they always say? To get the winning question, what do you want for world? And I want world peace. I mean, hey, think of it. Think of that person that you need to be reconciled with. That think of all these things that are out of place, and Jesus says, this is how you put them back in. You don't get your way because you're mad. You give it up. I mean, wives are stated in 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 1 that a wife has a disobedient husband. And so who does not obey the word, they without the word are won by the conduct of their wives. They made peace. They won. They won the fight. Not because they beat them. And there's the other part of the meek shall inherit the earth. What's the phrase? Strength, peace through strength. That's what we're talking about. Peace through strength. Guess what the Bible calls that kind of strength in the Beatitudes? Meekness. Blessed are the meek, for they shall
inherit the earth.
There's your abundant life. You've done it. What an incredible thing that you have demonstrated before us all. With your poor spirit, your mourning heart, desiring to do good, as a peacemaker, you have made peace and changed the world. Then how you did it is you demonstrated it through love. 38 through 48. Now, think of this. That you may be the children of your Father in heaven. You got to be perfect. Is he meaning like you're perfect like God perfect? What does he mean by that? Blameless. How do you get that way?
tells us, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 times, just being perfect is one of them. It tells us to be blameless at the period of our faith. We do that by examining ourselves to know when we're in sin, and when we find out we're in sin, we repent, pray for forgiveness, cover that we have someone pray for us.
So much of our sinful behavior is the result of being directed by other people. They either bring temptation, or they bring drama, or they bring things that we don't know how to handle, and therefore we lose the capacity of being reconciled, agreeing with an adversary, or fixing anything. And I think that's why this little section of Matthew 38, 5:38 through 48 is in there. The sense of being blameless in our aspect, as Jesus is teaching it, you've heard it said this way is how you've done it, but this is the way that it will be. And actually this is the way that it will be true and actually work. Our ability to love God is equivalent to our willingness to love other people. And the reason I'm saying this is, how do you have the one without the other? You can't. In previous lessons, is it already time? Jesus is explaining, and later in his life exemplifies the lessons of be perfect even as your Father in heaven is perfect. The heart of this lesson, I think, in this perfection is to love one another. And let me just put it into you this way, and then we're going to stop. 1 John 4:12. No man has seen God at any time, but when we love one another, his love is perfected in us. Jesus prayed in John 17, neither do I pray for these alone, but those who will believe in me through their word, that they all may be one, as you, Father, in me and I in you, that they all may be one in us, that the world might believe that you sent me. Everybody understand how the world sees God and how we have God in us, both willing to do his good pleasure? It's here. It's right now as we begin to, and the main thing is that I wanted to get to is that we got, blessed are the peacemakers, these will be called the children of God. And why is peace the key to being blessed? It's because of what it creates. I mean, think of, yeah, well, I got to get back. All right, peace. We're going to stop right there. We'll go to we'll take a quick clip of the end of chapter 5 and jump into chapter 6 next week.